the mystical level of religion. When we reflect upon meditation and its relationship to interfaith dialogue today, I think it makes us aware that religion itself is an evolutionary part of humanity. The human creature, the human being, is a relatively new species in the history of the planet. We're a very young species. We represent a certain stage of evolution, a mysterious stage, because some kind of quantum leap clearly took place in the human being, and yet there is nothing to say that we're still not in the process of evolution. And we are now probably facing the challenges as well as the opportunities of taking control in some way of our own evolution. We know so much about what makes us who we are, about our DNA, about medicine and biology and neuroscience has changed the way we know ourselves, at least at a scientific and biological level. So we are facing a unique moment of evolution. This presents us with great ethical challenges, for which the religious traditions are very important partners in the conversation in society. Other ethical questions, such as euthanasia or respect for life, our religious traditions need to be well-informed and intelligent and contemplatively intelligent in the conversation that society, pluralistic societies, are having about these difficult ethical questions, and how far we meddle with life, with the structure of life. These are pressing questions that require a new kind of consciousness, a new kind of mind. It's no good just responding to those questions out of a catechism or out of fixed ideological ideas. We have to adapt to the nature of these new questions. That requires an intelligent conversation among religious people of all faiths to be able to respond to these challenges. Religion has evolved itself. Religion begins at a magical level. Humanity began with a magical view of religion. We see the problems of the world, we see the need for rain, we see the need for a good harvest, and we develop magical rituals that will ensure that the rain comes on time and that we make the earth fertile and we make families produce children. We rely upon these magical rituals or magical spells in order to ensure the well-being of the tribe. And then that evolves into a mythical stage of development, where the human mind begins to ask for explanations. Why is the world like this? Why are human beings so varied in their responses? Why do we have good and bad human beings? Why do we have violence at times and yet amazing generosity and selflessness at other times? And so the mythical system, the great myths of humanity, began to be told and retold as ways of explaining to ourselves the meaning of our own existence. So we can see these stages of human evolution and the evolution of religious consciousness taking place in the individual human creature. Because we are conscious human beings, because we are self-reflective, we should also be conscious of what stage of development we may have reached ourselves, or whether we've got blocked. You could be 65 years old and still at a magical stage of development. It's very easy to get stuck. And there are a lot of religious people who look at religion in terms of magical manipulation. We manipulate the higher powers. And this is true of every religion. In mosques and temples and synagogues and churches around the world, you will find people for whom this form of religion is the primary one. They come to the temple in order to pray for long life, for prosperity, for health, for fertility. And these are the things we all want. They're pretty standard. We all want those things: good health, prosperity, care for our children, and so on. It's the most natural thing in the world that we should present those needs. We should be conscious of those needs, and we should relate those needs to what we believe in. But at what level are we doing that? At the magical level, we think that if we do this little ritual, that we are actually gaining God's or some higher power's favor, or we're manipulating the forces of the universe in some way for our own benefit, making ourselves feel better, more secure, as if we paid our insurance policy. Are we being a bit hard on people? I don't think so. I think we can see it as a valid stage of development, but it's something we should be questioning ourselves about. And in our interreligious dialogue, meditation is going to give us the stimulus to discuss these questions with each other. St. Augustine asked this question in the 5th century. St. Augustine, one of the great teachers of the early Christian church. He said, "Why do we ask God for what we need?" Jesus said, "You do not need to ask your Heavenly Father because your Heavenly Father knows your needs before you ask. So don't go babbling on thinking that the more you say, the more likely you are to be heard." Augustine asks, why then do we put our needs into words when we go to church or synagogue or temple or mosque? Is it to ask God to change his mind? God is sort of like a CEO. We don't actually ever get to see him. He's too exalted in the hierarchy, but we can send messages to him and try to get his attention. That doesn't make sense. We don't ask God to change his mind. Do we do that in order to ask God to intervene on my behalf because I'm a favorite? Does God have favorites? St. Paul says God does not have favorites. Jesus says God is like the sun who shines on good and bad alike and is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. St. Augustine's answer to that question is, no, these are not the reasons that we ask God for this or for that, petition or intercession, but in order to deepen our faith that God cares, that our needs are known to God, and that we can trust that. Deep trust is the answer. So we have the magical level, the mythical level, and then religion evolves into a social and a legal institution. It's something we belong to, something that gives us an identity. There are 10, I think, officially recognized religions in Singapore. Can you belong to 2 of those? Not officially, not statistically. In practice, many people do move around. The leaders of religions, of course, their responsibility and their work is often to serve that particular community and to strengthen its identity and its development. Maybe we're not now trying to steal members from each other's religions. We're not trying to convert people by wile or by persuasion or by bribery or blackmail or anything else. Hopefully we're not doing that anymore. But our emphasis, very often in religious leadership, is to defend or to develop that particular identity. And that's not a bad thing. We need to belong. We need to be rooted and grounded. Just as we need to belong to a particular human biological family. So I think we need to belong to a spiritual family and a religious tradition and to grow in that. So particular identity is not a bad thing in itself until, of course, it becomes exclusive or it becomes superior. We're better than you. We are more highly evolved than you. You are wrong. Or there is a subtle level of competition. When that happens, of course, then religion begins to atrophy. It begins to dry up, and it loses its spiritual vitality and energy. And therefore it fails to respond to the real spiritual needs of its own members, and it is not able to contribute to the spiritual needs of society in the particular way that it can do. That level of religious development, the social and the legalistic, where we set strong frameworks and we have rules that you have to obey in order to remain a valid, paid-up member of that religion, that's a stage of development. And we have to be conscious of that stage of development and not get caught in it, not get stuck in it. But there is a further stage, both of human spiritual development and of the development of religion. And I think this is where a stage that we are seeing more clearly than ever before in history present to us today, and that is the mystical level. We could call it by other words, let's call it mystical or contemplative. It's this mystical level of religion. But actually that mystical level of religion has been there from the very beginning. It's even potentially present at the magical stage. Magical is not the same as mystical, but the seeds of that full development of human consciousness, the seeds of the mystical union with God, are present at the earliest levels of our journey. But it's in the mystical stage, when we become conscious of that, that union becomes simple. Mystical union is simplicity. God is infinitely simple, according to Aquinas. God is infinitely simple. But it's only at this mystical level of development, personal or religious, that we understand what that really means. It is here, in this stage of our evolution, that the meeting of distinct religious traditions is most fruitful for humanity as a whole. So this is why I've been saying that it's important for religions and religious leaders and teachers to be conscious of their own contemplative tradition, to teach it to their young members, and to make it conscious part of their formation and of their community life. And out of that dimension, the relationship with other religions will become empowered for the common good of humanity. Meditation is, of course, as a universal human heritage and human wisdom, the simple way in which we can make that happen, by teaching meditation from within our own tradition.